Throughout history, there have been brave men and women who have held fast to the principles they hold dear. Some have raised their banner victoriously, while others have been victorious in death. We see a common thread in these lives: trust in God and a firm foundation in His Word. Join me as we dig into some of the greatest stories in biblical and modern history to uncover some of life's greatest mysteries. This is The Echoes of Warriors, a journey throughout the ages.
Uneasy lies the head who wears the crown. A line from King Henry IV, a play written by William Shakespeare. I remember hearing this one day and jotting it down so I wouldn't forget it. I pondered on it off and on for quite some time, and questions began coming to my mind. Is my head heavy? If so, why? Was I resolute in my beliefs and submitted to God like I should be? I began to examine several things that had been consuming my thoughts and realized I was being weighed down and wearing a crown that wasn't mine to wear. And in some cases, I had other things wearing that crown. In Matthew 6:24, Jesus states, "You cannot serve two masters." All too often, we try to be the masters of our own lives and only bring God in for special occasions when we can no longer find a way to get involved. If we make God the Lord of all, He must be the Lord of all. That includes the things we deem small as well as the situations that require a miracle. In Joshua 24, we find Joshua addressing the people in what would be his farewell address. He starts his speech by reminding the Israelites of their history and what God had done for them. From Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to Moses and the Exodus from Egypt. He then lists the people they have victoriously defeated, and it all seems to culminate with these words. "And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom ye will serve. Whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land ye dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Choose ye this day whom ye will serve." He knows his time has come, and he will no longer be there to guide them, but reminds them it is not me, but it is God who has won you these great victories. Choose who you will serve. Do not fall back to the gods of this world. Choose to serve the Lord. You can see the conviction that was instilled in him by Moses, who undoubtedly prepared him for the leadership position that he now held. In Exodus 32, when Moses came down from the mountain and found the Israelites worshiping the golden calf, he asked in verse 26, "Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me." Moses drew a line and asked, "Which side are you on?" Peter references the sin of the Israelites, saying, "And they made a calf in those days and offered sacrifice unto the idol, and rejoiced in the works of their own hands." Acts 7:41. So often, rather than glory in the things God has done, we relish in the works we have done. This is how idolatry begins. When you become accustomed to wearing the crown, it starts to become easy to delegate things in your life to worldly lusts and passions. Areas that were once clear now become gray, and the path that seems safe now becomes uncertain. This is why lines must be drawn. The world so often turns a line that was once straight into one that is full of angles, so you become afraid as to even have an opinion on any matter. This is the culture of the world, but not the way of God. People with angles always have a way out. People with lines are prepared to die for what they believe in. Throughout history, men have drawn lines and fought and died for what they thought was right. These men have held a distinguished place in the annals of history and have inspired courage in the hearts of many. One such story comes to mind, where a line was literally drawn. Men from across America, from all walks of life, came here united in one common goal: freedom. The Western territories were expanding, and promises of a new and better life rang out towards the east, beckoning men from all walks of life with its sweet enthrallment. Head west, the rally cry for many men of the day who sought the thrill of adventure, more freedom, and a better life. Family, friends, and strangers alike would often find the letters GTT chalked on the vacant houses, farms, and town records. It meant gone to Texas. Texas was a popular destination, though still controlled by Mexico. In 1824, several hundred immigrants had arrived, and by the beginning of the 1830s, that number grew to almost 15,000. In 1830, the Mexican government passed a bill that would ban all further immigration into Texas. Unable, though, to guard its vast borders, settlers continued to swarm in, and talks of becoming an independent state rang throughout every family's home. With tensions rising between the Mexican government and the Texians, as they became known, the Mexican military sought to disarm the disgruntled settlers and quash any chance of an uprising. In September of 1835, with relations at a boiling point, things came to a head when a Mexican force arrived to relieve the town of Gonzales of their cannon, which they used to fight off Indian raids. When asked to give up the cannon, the response was, quote, "The cannon is in the town, and only through force will we yield. We are weak and few in numbers. Nevertheless, we are contending for what we believe just principles." The next day saw the 100 Mexican dragoons retreating, surprised by the firing cannon and the flag waving above it with the inscription, "Come and take it." By 1836, an all-out war was going on between the Texians and the armies of Mexico that would see one of the most memorable battles to ever take place. About 200 men lined the walls of a fort that had once been a Spanish mission. It was called The Alamo. On February 23rd, Santa Anna arrived and had begun a siege of the small force. He sent a courier to demand the surrender of the Alamo, and Colonel William B. Travis, commander of the fort, responded by firing a cannon. A clear message, to say the least. Surrounded and vastly outnumbered, on February 24th, Travis would pen this stirring letter, a plea for assistance. To the people of Texas and all Americans in the world, fellow citizens and compatriots, I am besieged by 1,000 or more of the Mexicans under Santa Anna. I have sustained a continual bombardment and cannonade for 24 hours, and have not lost a man. The enemy has demanded a surrender at discretion, otherwise the garrison are to be put to the sword if the fort is taken. I have answered the demand with a cannon shot, and our flag still waves proudly from the walls. I shall never surrender or retreat. Then I call on you in the name of liberty, of patriotism, and everything dear to the American character, to come to our aid, with all dispatch. The enemy is receiving reinforcements daily and will no doubt increase to 3,000 or 4,000 in 4 or 5 days. If this call is neglected, I am determined to sustain myself as long as possible and die like a soldier who never forgets what is due to his own honor and that of his country. Victory or death. William Barrett Travis. Resolute in the cause for Texas independence and knowing that defeat was imminent, Colonel Travis knew the Alamo must still be held for as long as possible, as to give Sam Houston more time to build the Army of Texas. Travis went down to his men, took his sword out, and drew a line in the sand. He gave his men a choice. Walk across this line and with me resist the forces of Santa Anna and defend the Alamo to the death. Or try to escape and save yourself. As the story goes, all but 2 crossed. One was Jim Bowie. He could not cross due to bad illness and was not physically able to walk. At this challenge, he asked the men to carry his cot across, leaving just one. A man named Moses Rose, who escaped over the wall and would go down in history as the coward of the Alamo. The rest of these men, unwavering in their convictions, were prepared to die for what they believed was right. Another one of the men who would also walk across the line that day was none other than Davy Crockett, the king of the wild frontier himself, who had a saying that was published in the almanacs between 1835 and 1856. Always be sure you are right, then go ahead. In the distance, buglers could be heard from the Mexican lines. The song they were playing was called Degüello. This song was played before battle to signify that no quarter would be given to their enemy. A line had been drawn and a distinction had been made. There was no turning back, and no want to turn back. As Travis had penned with such conviction, victory or death. These men were going ahead. On the morning of March 6, 1836, at 5 a.m., the attack commenced. From all sides, 1,800 Mexican assault troops advanced towards the Alamo, and the awaiting Texian gunners standing by their cannons. The cannons loaded with canister shot fired into the ranks, and every musket on the wall fired in cascade. The dark dawn lit up with flashes from both sides as they clashed with fierce vigor. The Texians, though heavily outnumbered, put up a defiant defense. In the end, though, they could not withstand any longer. Among the dead were Colonel William B. Travis, Davy Crockett, and Jim Bowie. Their fight wasn't for naught, though. Soon the news spread across Texas like a wildfire, and then across America. "Remember the Alamo" rang out across the nation and became the rally cry for the Army of Texas and every Texian that believed in the cause. 1 month later, on April 21st, Sam Houston and his army would defeat Santa Anna at the Battle of San Jacinto, and Texas would go on to win its independence. To believe in something unto death is a powerful thing. How often do we get blinded by our temporal situations and forget the purpose of our journey? The reward of a long journey is the easy part to rejoice over. It's every step of that journey that is the hard part. We get overwhelmed by our emotions and lose sight of the line that we need to follow. The Word of God is that line. God has drawn it and asks us to take up our cross and follow Him. Paul followed God gladly unto death, stating, "I have fought the good fight and finished the race." He rejoiced unto death, meaning even death could not shake him of his convictions. We must remind ourselves every day that what steps we take with God today are part of a long trail that we leave behind us. Sometimes you may not get accolades for doing the right thing. Sometimes people will never know. You may not be in the limelight, but you'll never know how many people see God's light shining through you. If they were to follow the trail of footsteps you left behind, what would they find? A trail of angles or a straight line? Will they say he or she did it his or her own way? Or will they say it was God's way? Will you wear the crown and live a life of weariness? Or will you give God the crown and live a life where the yoke is easy and the burden is light?